check. Am I starting now?
Yes, you're to begin.
Oh, all right, great. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to say a big thank you to Kebitkase Women Development Center. Thank you for organizing this and hosting this leadership event in Port Harcourt. For the attendees online, I also want to say a big thank you to you for your interest in the subject of leadership. Well, like it's been read, I actually have a few years of experience working with leaders, and I'm happy to be of service to you this afternoon. I have spent 7 years researching at the PhD level on what leaders do and how do they become effective. So I hope I have something that is useful that you can tap into. This is not going to be so much of preaching at you because you are already leaders in your respective spheres of life. You lead at work, most likely. You lead at home. That's one area. We lead in our families. That's one area that most of us don't really consider as leadership, but which is extremely important for us as to develop leadership, what I call our leadership ecosystem in this country. So I want to thank you for your interest and showing up this afternoon. Please, I'll walk us through a few slides just so that we can have the background, but I sent some reading material earlier. I don't know how many of us had time to read that article that I sent. I see your hand, Lillian Nwokobia. You want to say something or what? Kingsley Roland, you read the article? Oh, so you could just let me see your hands if you read the article, because that's a good place to start. All right, Kingsley, I see your hand. You read the article. Thank you very much. All right, so that article was so that you at least have some background. Oh, okay, I see your hand in the room. Great, great, great to see you. Thank you very much. Good, good, good. Thank you. Great. Yeah, so that article was so that you have something to prep your mind about what we're talking about this afternoon. 747-929, I see your hand also. So leadership and diplomacy, in my view, are two sides of the same coin in a sense. But let's talk about the theory of it a bit, and then we will have as much interaction as possible because I want this to be interactive. Leadership is an art, at the same time is a science. So let's, I'll share my screen now and walk us through quickly a few slides that are prepared to give us some context into the subject we are discussing today, after which we will have a few minutes together to discuss this at length and in depth so that I can take your perspectives. Okay. Host, you have to enable me to share my screen so that I can do my presentation. All right, you have to enable me to be able to do that.
Okay,
all right, good. So in terms of leadership and diplomacy, you can be an effective. All right, great, great. All right, allow me to do that. Okay. All right. Can we see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, like mentioned to you, Akin is my name, and I prepared this very short presentation so that we can together explore the subject of leadership and diplomacy this afternoon. Right. So the first question is, what is leadership and who is a leader? I know you are in a leadership school, and of course you must have read all kinds of things about what leadership is and who is a leader. But essentially, leadership is the process by which we influence others to accomplish our goals or to direct our organization in a way that makes it cohesive and coherent. So it's about goal achievement. Effective leadership is about achieving the goals of either the organization or of the individual, because there's self-leadership. How do you lead yourself? Most of us don't um, pause to think about the fact that as we try as much as possible to lead others, we're actually leading ourselves in the process. And that's something that I want us to also remember as we think about leadership. So who is a leader? That person who sits in front of others or who chooses to influence things and get things done. And so in a way, we are all leaders, even though as we lead, there are different levels of leadership that we are at in our journey. At the same time, we are following others, as this shows. These are all leaders at different stages of their development. And so leading is not an end in itself, but it's a part of a process of development. There are a number of qualities that we all aspire to have to become good leaders, to help our teams, our groups, our employers or employees to become more effective at what we do. And there are all kinds of things you'll find in leadership, the qualities that gives leadership effectiveness. One of the ones you would have: communication, integrity, accountability, empathy, humility. But today we are zeroing in on diplomacy. What is diplomacy? Most of the time when we hear the word diplomacy, that word connotes maybe some embassy, some government. And really, the origin of that is from the word diplomat. A diplomat is somebody who represents a government somewhere. And they do this by offering consular services, by offering mediation, negotiating trade, okay? And just being there as the representative of a government. And this is where most of the attributes of diplomatic leadership comes from, okay? These are skills that we deploy in dealing with others without causing bad feelings. So as a diplomat, one of the key essential element of diplomacy is being able to seeking to achieve common goals, okay? Getting to common ground, working into a win-win situation. Leaders need this skill from time to time because, as we've known, some of us who have had to do some HR work, that's human resources, you know that human beings are the most difficult resources to deal with. And so leaders must come with a toolkit that allows them to bring the different interests or in the workplace or in the environment or in our communities, because I know some of us here are community, agents, change agents, CSOs, civil society people. You need to get people on board, to get people to either come to a new consensus, you create new realities together from time to time. So you have your own reality, somebody else has his own
Yes.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
All right. Now I've just gone to my phone because I've gone to my phone because my my internet wasn't cooperating well. So I'll just go through the slides. I'll email the slides out now so you can have it. But just give me 1 minute to get this sorted. All right, so I think I dropped off when I started talking about the fact that diplomacy is a key skill that leaders must have in this time. And I was defining diplomacy as the ability to get things done through other people, influencing them in a way that gets shared results. And this is extremely important for leaders. As we can see, I asked the question, I think, before I dropped off, that what is it that leaders, what happens when there's a breakdown in diplomacy? I asked that question and I'm not sure I got an answer. I would like somebody to give me, just guess, what do you think happens when there's a breakdown in diplomacy?
Anybody?
Yeah, Kingsley
Okay.
Roland, yes, I see your hand. Do you want to say something? Yes.
Just come. Yeah, someone in the office. Say something, man.
Sorry?
Remove it. Just come and remove it.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Okay. My own concept is when there is a good diplomacy in the interaction and relationship within people, organizations, and groups, it will cut off or devoid of violence or crisis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a history of human, in human history, we have wars. Wars are the results. Violence. When diplomacy breaks down, that is the end result. And that's why this is a very, very crucial ingredient of leadership. And as we see, even in our current, our current context as a country, I also asked us to come to class with examples of good leaders who have used diplomacy well that we know of in our context. We'll get there because I'm going to sort out my internet and be able to come back and continue with the slides. So diplomacy in leadership is the use of tact, T-A-C-T, that's the word. Tact in such a way that we're able to negotiate conflict, we're able to negotiate policies, we're able to negotiate interest and benefits for both parties or multiple parties, multi-stakeholders in a conversation. Now, this is impossible if we do not invest the time in knowing what I call the other. So when we lead, one of the things we need to invest on, one of the real investment of leadership is in knowing the other. It's important to have what we call self-awareness, self-integration, but also to invest in social interactions. And I'll give you a very interesting example for myself and from my experience. Currently, I work with a group of civil society organizations that are based in the Niger Delta, including Kebekase, actually. And 5 years ago, I think I've only been to Port Harcourt maybe 2 or 3 times before taking on this assignment. And so I now have to work with people who are based in Niger Delta, who are more knowledgeable about the Niger Delta, who understand the culture of the Niger Delta. And I'm from the Southwest. And you know the way we work in Nigeria, when you don't go to the other part of the country, most of the time you are looking at the people there and they are very strange, okay? I didn't think Niger Delta was strange. I just felt that it was probably because I didn't understand a lot about what was going on. So when I took that assignment, one of the things I did was to understand the history. minus what we've watched on TV about the Ogoni and the Ken Saro-Wiwa, I started reading what people have written about the experience of the Niger Delta. And so when I came for my very first meeting in 2016, I think, I'm sure you remember that meeting at, what's this, my favorite hotel in Port Harcourt again. One of the things that I did was one of the things I did was to keep quiet for the first day, just trying to understand the people that I needed to work with. And you see, what that gives a leader is then you are able to understand the interest, you're able to understand where they're coming from, and you're able to empathize. And so going forward from that moment, I could see a lot about the people that I was working with. What are their motivations? I could see genuine concern for what's going on and a desperate need to get things done. So when we come to our meetings and we have those conversations, I know where they're coming from as a leader. And sometimes I make difficult decisions that I'm sure they don't agree with, not because I don't like what they're trying to achieve, but because I also have a bigger view of where everything was supposed to be going. So that's where the place of tact comes in, T-A-C-T. And tact is the art of making a point without making an enemy. I want you to write that down if you can. Tact is the art of making a point without making an enemy. You see, if we as leaders, those of us who are leading in whatever area and the sphere of influence where we're leading, are able to adopt this, if there's nothing you take away from this conversation, I think as a people, and I can say this with every sense of responsibility as a Nigerian, we are viewed most of the time as being very quarrelsome people. In fact, the way we talk, sometimes people are afraid to engage with us because we raise our voices. I don't know about you, but our voices, just normal pitch that we are talking, somebody is already shivering if it's not from our culture. I don't know whether that has happened to you before. Have you experienced that before?
Yes.
So tact is something that leaders must have to be able to engage in diplomacy and in a diplomatic way. So leaders must be good diplomats. They must be authentic and authentically appreciate the emotions and situations of others, no matter what they might be feeling about it. They have to accept that these people or these followers or these people who are under my sphere of influence, they have the right to a solution that all parties must be able to agree to. I'm going to give us a few minutes. So let me just pause here for about 5 minutes. I want to see how I can go back on my computer so we can continue, because there's a video that I want us to watch that's going to be the next assignment that we're going to have. So please give me 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, I want you to think about a situation where you have used tact to resolve what could have ended in a potential conflict, or where you have not used tact and it had ended in conflict. I don't know your names from here, but I can see the madam in the red mask. I'm going to call on you when I come. And then there's a gentleman at the back who's got a striped black top there. I'm going to call on you when we come back in 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes to set my computer back up, and then I can start showing you what we're going. Yes, you are touching your glasses. Yes, I see you. All right, see you in 5 minutes. Let me sort out my internet and try and come back on. But in those minutes, let's do that.
Okay, sir.
Where's the fish?
All right. I want to share my screen again. Can I have permission to share my screen?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Can I share now?
Yes, sir.
It's saying you disabled my.
Okay. 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
All right. Okay. So please let me know if you can hear and follow what I'm sharing.
Well, like this afternoon, I'll be up here about 2:30, and we'll paint till about 6. Sometimes crank up some music, and I just let her go.
That's the really wonderful thing about painting, is that it's absolutely transporting.
Sorry, can you hear?
Yes, we can hear it.
Okay, good, good.
2 years ago,
Yes.
I was sitting up here, wondering how to kind of live life to the fullest. And I read Winston Churchill's essay, Painting as a Pastime, and it inspired me. I had never lifted a brush before. I'd never mixed a paint. So I gave it a whirl. I spent a lot of time on personal diplomacy, and I befriended leaders. I learned about their families and their likes and dislikes, to the point where I felt comfortable painting them.
I watched President George W. Bush really try to get to know the person across the table or sitting next to him in the Oval Office. I saw even the most difficult leaders then begin to talk about what mattered in a very deeply personal sense. And having then broken the ice, you can go on to the more difficult questions.
I watched one of the best at personal diplomacy.
All right, I'm going to stop there. I'm sure we all know who that was. That was George W. Bush Jr. And as the president of probably the most powerful nation on earth at the time, he engaged in personal diplomacy. That is getting to know people for who they are and then being able to use that as a tool for getting common or shared results. That is how diplomacy works for most leaders. Any leader who is going to be effective at being leaders or at being a leader must adopt a position that seeks to understand the other. And it is in that understanding that leaders are able to influence effectively, either for their government or for their organization or for themselves to get their goals. So for those of us who work in development world, for instance, or even if you work in the corporate world, you always have to bring in other people's interests, not just your own. The result of not applying a lot of tact and diplomacy lies around us in some of the biggest intractable challenges that we have to face right now as a nation, because we have refused to take the interest of others in tow. Those who have gone before us as leaders and who are currently leading us as leaders, most of the time think not a lot about the interest of others. And that's why I challenge you, and as I challenge myself also, because we are also still growing as leaders. If we will adopt the diplomatic approach of, one, listening to the other, becoming active listeners. That's one key way by which you can develop diplomacy as a leader. Understanding where the other person is coming from. Because most of the time, if we are able to empathize with this other person, our leadership will be much more effective. While I was going off, I said I was going to ask for 2 examples. So I'm coming now. Madam in front, can you give us one example of a leader that's, or in your own experience, a situation where you are diplomatic and got results, or when you didn't and you didn't get the kind of result that you wanted? I mean, this is something that happens to us all the time. We don't win all the time. Sometimes we win, sometimes we come short. So do you want to share with us?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, one of the leaders in Nigeria I love and I also appreciate is our former president who loved Jonathan. Okay.
Yeah. Can you give me a specific example of how he was diplomatic?
Okay, the example I can start, which we are all aware and which we all know, is during his second tenure in the office, the election that was conducted, and as the president, as an incumbent president, he had all the rights to cancel that election, to stop the election, or even create violence or create war or something else, just to suit his motive or his selfish interest. But he was able to be diplomatic and said, my election to be in the office does not require the blood of any Nigerian. And so he quietly, diplomatically, tactically, with, let me say, a beautiful skill, he was able to handle that situation and said, okay, let me allow myself to go down for the nation to go up. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much. That is an excellent example, because we are here today having this conversation despite the pandemic, despite some of the issues that we still have, because somebody chose to put the interest of others, interest of others above his own. And that is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct. That's been missing in our nation for a long time. It's been missing for a long time. Thank you. That was a good reflective answer. The gentleman at the back, I also want you to give us an example of a leader that was diplomatic, or either maybe also a personal experience of when you were diplomatic.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I think one of the leaders I admire so much in the diplomatic skills, somebody like Kofi Annan. Kofi Annan was a good diplomat who used negotiation skills and diplomacy skillfully. And a whole lot of things that would have gone wrong in the Eastern War with the Americans. He used that to maneuver with, negotiate with all his diplomatic skills. I think Kofi Annan was one of the leaders I admire so much.
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Kofi Annan was a distinguished diplomat, and the whole world at the time respected his authority because of his diplomacy. Thank you. I really appreciate you, because you took this well and gave us very good examples of how things can go well when leaders adopt a diplomatic stand. Thank you very much. So what are the benefits of being a diplomatic leader? That's for us now. Okay, we earn the trust and respect of others. And you see, I said to a lot of my friends that one of the biggest challenges that Nigeria has today is what you call a trust deficit in leadership. Another way that that word is coined is what we call social capital. Public leaders have lost a lot of that social capital, and that's why they give us one instruction, we are doing something completely different. We don't even believe that they have our interest at heart, okay? And if we must be leaders, effective leaders, we must earn and keep the trust and respect of it. That's why when we propose something, people are able to rally around and are able to engage with us. We have to build positive and productive relationships, okay? We have to, when we become diplomatic leaders, it helps us to build productive relationships. Or other way around, it is a result of productive relationships. So it's a counterintuitive process for us as leaders. We're also able to negotiate agreements, and people are going to be able to hold us to our word, to their words. They're also able to lay down their own positions for us, okay? And through this, we're able to gain advantage without the use of force. The truth of the matter is, force has never gotten sustainable results in any situation that it has been applied. Even when nations have fought wars over a breakdown of diplomacy, they always come back to where? The negotiating table. And one good example that I really, really like to use for diplomatic leader was Nelson Mandela. Mandela had all the reasons in this world not to allow the whites in South Africa to be a part of the nation of South Africa for what they did to him. But several years ago, I read a book about how they came to negotiate between the ANC and the white minority rulers. And one of the things he said was, they both own this country. If everybody continues to fight over what is right, what is rightfully theirs, and nothing will ever get done. And they might not even get the independence that the blacks wanted, even at the time that it had been released. There's a book by, it's called Scenario Planning. And I'll probably find the name and type it so that you could look it up after a while and read that story. A very interesting story, bringing all of the white supremacists in a room and all of these ANC guys who have been jailed, who have been beaten, who have been tortured. The same people who tortured them were brought in the same room and said, what kind of South Africa do we want to have? And Mandela said, you must sit down and have a conversation. Otherwise, it's going to be hell. Oh, so Barry, I see you are raising your hand. I'm a bit afraid for my internet. So let me just quickly finish this presentation and we will have time to discuss. I'm not in a hurry if you are not. So Barry, I see your hand. Just give me a few minutes to wrap this while I still have the internet. I don't like that break in transmission so much. So diplomatic leadership requires the person to be a good manager, a resilient negotiator, and a trusted advisor. And it enables him or her to raise awareness to assist followers. So what are the strategies that a diplomatic leader needs? He needs to be able to hold honesty and trust as key values. You have to recognize and appreciate different opinions. You have to be willing to change and adapt his or her approach from time to time. You have to be able to acknowledge the political landscape of a situation and work within that landscape. Because you see, ultimately, we have to seek to understand more as leaders. Because the less you understand, the more you fear. And the more you fear, or the more you are afraid, the more dangerous you become as a leader. We all remember, at least everybody that I can see in the room, are old enough to remember that we used to have a president in this country, or head of state in this country, who never saw anybody and was hiding behind dark goggles. That is what happens when leaders do not understand the people they are leading, and they have not been diplomatic enough for them to be able to access them. Because the more you do not know about the people, the more you fear them, the more you are afraid, the more dangerous you become. Please note that. As leaders, we have to seek to learn, okay, as much as possible. So in terms of our strategies for becoming a diplomatic leader, we do not place our needs above others. We do not threaten and approach others with hostility when frustrated. And that happens a lot with most of us who are leaders in this country. And that's why I like this initiative, that we need to change our thinking about what really makes things work. Because the way we have done it so far, has it worked? It has not worked well. Let us be honest with ourselves. And that's why there's a need for us to re-engage. Don't go behind other people's backs. Don't close off dialogue. That is not an attribute of a diplomatic leader. So the floor is open now. How can we be more effective diplomatic leaders? So Barry, I don't know whether it's a Mr. or Mrs. Please, you have the floor. Let's have a conversation. And we can, I hope we can all learn from this. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Or am I still here? Yes, I think I'm here. All right. Oh my. The question was meant for the lady in red in front with, but from the look of things, she's not the one speaking. Oh, Kingsley. Oh, interesting talk so far. I look forward to take so let's okay. Please, if you want to speak one question, do well to raise your hand so we can acknowledge you. Thank you. Raise your hand. Okay, sorry, it was a mistake. Oh, all right. So that's the end of that presentation. It was just to set the tone for us to jointly think about what it means to be a diplomatic leader. Now we know that diplomatic leaders must explore and understand the other person, look at where is this person coming from, and be able to tell this person my own point of view without necessarily destroying the trust or belittling the concerns of the other. Okay, so in this, what it means is we have to seek to understand more other cultures, seek to understand more other relationships that are beyond what we come from in our area, in our sphere of influence. And I think I remember I was sharing my Ogoni cleanup story, and the fact that today I am even fighting the people in Ogoni more than they fight themselves over what's going on, because I have suddenly become so invested in the situation. I'm sure Madam MM will bear me witness to the fact that I almost fought over some councillor recently that was saying we should come and pay them a visit, because I said, no, we cannot. We have been fighting this thing on their behalf. So now is not the time for them to be telling us what to do for them. They too must get up and get involved in this matter. So that is what happens when, as leaders, we invest ourselves in the other person for whom we must also engage to achieve results. So I'm hoping now for us to share ideas, because look, you have not been leading in a vacuum. You are also leaders, and I'm sure you've had experiences around how to use tact, how to use diplomacy. So I would like to hear from you, and I would like us to use that as a platform for bigger discussions around this. Yes, Roland, you're raising your hand.
Roland, please unmute yourself and speak.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for the quick lecture. For me, one of the outside the that was mentioned in the process of your teaching, I also understand that there is a point for either to have that aspect of discernment, ability for you to be able to decipher how to lead your people, or to be, to uncover certain elements that might, generate conflict or trouble. So for you to qualify yourself as a diplomatic leader, you must have the wholesomeness of paying good attention to discussion and feedback from your people that you're leading, the ability to also have emotional empathy, which is very important, because when you don't understand how certain persons feel or certain group of people feel, you will not be able to have a definite way of meeting their needs or having to come to a round table of agreement. So that aside of emotional empathy, also have the ability for you to relearn on every situation or circumstances. You don't judge what is happening now with the experience of the past. You must have the ability to retreat your step and then make further consultation on how to solve the problem. So a diplomatic leader must be willing to have emotional empathy, relearn new ways of handling issue and settling conflict. And you must also be very sensitive in managing conflict, because when you're leading people, you are leading people with different behavior, different orientation, different environment. These are part of the influences that forms the way you lead people. So like there is a particular quote I love so much about with Madame Fodio. He said, when you are leading human beings, you know, different sticks go for different persons. But when you are leading an animal, a stick is for all the cows. So this is also part of the way of, you know, attacking diplomatic leadership. And looking at the continent today and the world today, a leader who is leading people cannot be effective if you don't recognize the aspect of diplomacy.
Yeah.
Diplomacy has to do with ability for you to discover, redesign, and then re-identify what the problems are, and then coming down to a very low state of mind to be able to carry everyone along. So it's a long chain of understanding and a long chain of value. If you must drive change, sustainable change, and be able to make impact in the lives of people across your boundaries of or your space of leadership and beyond the space where you are, where you are saying now, you must be able to push further for some of these issues around relearning your tactics, apply emotional intelligence, and then being less concerned of being petty. Sometimes the more you grow, the more you learn to learn certain things. Go, there are certain things you don't give information or you don't give answers to. You just have to look for a way to, you know, handle issues. In a case in Nigeria, we have seen a case where bad diplomatic leadership has led us in terms of not having to consult the necessary persons, not taking decisions based on assumption, but taking decisions based on consultation. A leader, a diplomatic leader must learn to consult opinions and consult systems and people. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. There's a lot that was packed in what you just shared. And the truth of the matter is, as much as we do not pay serious attention to the skills of diplomacy. So what are the key skills to being more diplomatic? We have to become active listeners. Active listener is someone who is listening with an intention to understand, not with an intention. Mr. Friday, I see your hand, but I just want to make this point quickly about active listening. That's one key element of being, and it's connected to what you mentioned, Kingsley, about empathy, emotional intelligence. It is in actively listening, and it is not just in the words, because you see, in communication, the words themselves actually form the least part of our communication. What is not being said in the body language, although I don't like using that word, we've had that word misused in this country about our president, body language, body language. What is not being said in the body language, in the tone, in the pitch of the voice, okay? These are things that it is only when you listen actively that you can pick them up. As a leader, active listening is important, okay? Seeking to understand others by, you know, investing in knowing about a culture, for instance. So I give you an example. I used to work, the first time I joined the British Council, straight from my village. The first party that they were throwing and they said we should go together, blah, blah, blah. I joined them and got there, only for me to realize that when everything finished, when at the end of everything, when we had finished, the director that led us was just saying, okay, so you took this, how much is that? When they brought the bill, he was ticking it off for everybody. In our Niger way, you don't do that. You are the big man, you took all of us out, you pay. Okay? But then I went back to understand that in this culture, even if you all agree to go out, you bring your drinks. That is cultural competence. That's one area that leaders who will be effective diplomats, because you see, our leadership will go beyond, for instance, our part of the country where we come from. Like right now, I don't live in the part of this country where I came from or where I grew up from. But today I have learned to recognize that those differences, even though they exist, there are still a lot of commonalities. And so one key area that diplomatic leadership works is for you not to focus so much on the differences, but on the commonalities so that we can get results. Today, every part of this country is looking for peace. A diplomatic leader at any point would look for opportunities to use that to galvanize energies of everyone so that we can move forward. And that doesn't have to be those ones in Abuja. It doesn't have to be the one in government house in Rivers. Even in our communities, even in our homes, in our offices, as leaders, we look for those commonalities to get results. So active listening, cultural competence, learning and relearning. The world is such a big place that you cannot know everything about everyone, but you have to seek to know so that you don't become dangerous to yourself and to others around you. Because when we take certain decisions, it becomes a source of danger, not just to us as leaders, but to others if we do not apply diplomacy in what we do. And there are so many examples in our national life. I keep using our national life because ultimately it is those things that build up to the national level. Every little decision that we take that does not bring the effective diplomatic leadership to the fore compounds the problem over time and magnifies it. And that's why, like in the words of Robert J. Palmer, he says, a leader has the uncanny ability to cast a shadow, either for light or for darkness, over those who follow them. So you need to ask yourself today, and I ask myself that question every day, as a leader, am I casting light on those who are under the influence of my leadership, or am I casting a shadow? Because we're doing either one or the other. And it is in the way we use this kind of skills or diplomacy that we cast those shadows. Either we're casting a light or we're casting a dark shadow. So I've got two hands. So please, I've got Friday, you are the one that, and then there's Patricia. So Friday, you've got the floor, please. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, just want to cite an example, and this thing happened in my church. There was a very high tension among our members, that a situation where if it was not properly handled, maybe one of the parties may leave the church, to the extent that every other person was angry with one party. So at that point, it got to my turn to make a statement. And I told, are you with me? Hello?
Yes, yes.
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 Sorry.
Yes.
Well, we can.
So I told the members that if we do not handle this affair very well, it may not result good to us, even though that person is agitating something that is very wrong. However, I told them that this man, we cannot leave you to go. We love you. The church loves you. And there is no way we can discriminate you. You are part and parcel of us. Nobody discriminates, whether you are of the same tribe with me or not. But do not feel that you are discriminated. You are part and parcel of us. Your family is part of us. And this church cannot let you go. Whatever that has happened is something that must happen where there are two or three that are gathered together. There must be this misunderstanding. However, note that we love you. Note that we cannot allow you to go. Note that nobody is discriminating you. At that point, the man that was so hungry that he wants to leave the church and all the rest, that he was not loved, was able to come down and became so sober to the extent that he offered to entertain the committee at that point. We were able to handle that situation at that time. But I looked at other members of the committee. They were so hungry because the man agitation was so wrong that they want to give it to him the way he wants it. I said no. At the end of the day, we are able to settle the matter, and we are in the same church, loving each other the way it should be. That is my example that I experienced. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And you see, in time, I am sure by now, some of those people who are really, really very angry at the time would probably now have a better understanding of why he was doing what he was doing at the time, and would probably now have a different view of the man. And that is what, you know, diplomacy allows us as leaders to gain. We gain the insight to understand others better. Yes, Patricia. You have to unmute yourself because we can't hear you. You are still muted.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It's almost what this other guy said is a church scenario also. Family in our
Looks like our internet wasn't really very strong. Hello?
Anybody wants to speak? Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I think our internet wasn't really very strong. I don't know if,
Yes, sir.
if there are any questions at this time. Is there any area of diplomacy in leadership that you want me to discuss further?
Yeah, there's a question from here, sir.
Okay, good.
I want to ask.
I can't see your face.
My nose.
Your face. Okay.
I'm disabled now. I think.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation. I want to ask what could be the worst scenario where a diplomacy may not work in the conflict, like the Israeli and the Palestinian conflict. We have been hearing time from time that it's a diplomatic solution, but over the years, that diplomacy has not worked.
Yeah.
Does it mean there's no trust among the parties, or what is the reason why that conflict has not been resolved? Thank you very much.
All right. You have given me a question that is tougher than jump. I think, and this is my personal opinion, and I'm not an expert on the Israeli-Arab conflict. I think you answered the question yourself. One of the key elements of making diplomacy work is trust and respect. A good understanding of that conflict will tell us that at every stage when there was supposed to have been positive movement on the sides of both groups, you find that there is a breakdown of trust. And unfortunately, most of those who really invested their lives in making sure that there was peace in the Middle East, for instance, they were either displaced by other forces before they could actualize the result of that diplomacy that was a trusting relationship between them. Don't forget, they have many years of very turbulent history. They have worldviews that are direct opposite of each other. And so when you have all of those things and there is no willingness to understand the position of the other, it becomes difficult to build trust. While we are talking about the Arab-Israeli conflict and the almost intractable nature of that conflict, to the extent that it's looking like in our lifetime they might not get a result. Don't forget, they almost got to a point where they had a trusted arbiter. I think it was Clinton that brought them to the Camp David Accord, where I think that was before Yasser Arafat died, I think. And they were almost at a point where they were going to accept and adopt that two-state solution. When you don't have a trusted arbiter in a situation where two parties are diametrically opposed, it becomes a big problem. It becomes difficult to get results through diplomacy. But you see, mark my words, they will still have to sit down and discuss and negotiate a solution. It will not be resolved by fighting. It will not be resolved by Iran getting proxies in Hezbollah or the Israelis deciding they want to fight it to the end. It's not going to be resolved like that. It will still be resolved with a conversation. So why don't we go for that in the first place? I like the Israeli-Arab conflict, but I like to bring it to even our own here. We have so many Israeli-Arab conflicts in Nigeria. The essence of this leadership school, for instance, is for us to become agents of change in changing the kind of narrative and conversations that we have about some of the almost intractable problems that we also have here. My focus in this conversation is to encourage you, as I constantly encourage myself, that even for some of the problems that we have as a country, it is not impossible to solve them with proper conversations. And one of the biggest challenges to diplomacy is a lack of genuine conversation. Conversations that go to the heart of what the problems are. In the Israeli conflict that you mentioned, the heart of the problem are two things. I think there is West Jerusalem, where those mosques are, and then the Temple Dome. They're fighting over who's going to own that, as well as the occupied territories, until they are able to sit down and have those proper conversations that says these are the boundaries by which we will abide, and these are done in trust and mutual respect. They might not have a diplomatic solution. The same way with us as a nation, we also need to have honest conversations about certain elements of our nationhood. There are too many inconsistencies. But if that is even taking it too far, even in our states, respective states, come to when there is election time, and then they will say, we zoned it to your zone last time. It is our turn this time. And somebody says, no, we didn't have a signature. We didn't sign an agreement. Those are the things that leadership, a new set of leadership, must come forward, where people must be able to you can hold them to their word. They will be sincere to appreciate the concern of others. That's where diplomacy stands. That's where diplomacy works. It works when we approach leadership from a point of understanding and acknowledging that we don't have all the answers. The area of community, yeah, I'm trying to read it. I think something about the area of community diplomacy leadership. How can a leader be more effective without offending the norms? So when you say the norms, what do we mean by the norms? Because you see, there are certain norms and practices that offend even the sense of social justice. And we have to first peel away those ones before you can go in as a diplomatic leader. First, we have to acknowledge those norms and bring our communities to a point where they accept that certain elements of those norms offend the very essence of social justice. Because where there is no justice, there cannot be peace. I think that's a famous slogan for the whole of the Niger Delta. You see, I have almost become Niger Delta by default. Where there is no justice, there cannot be peace. So some of these norms, I don't know what is inside that word norms, but if I know a little bit about some of my own cultural norms. There are some that are offensive to social justice. And it is the same in the old, almost 350 ethnic groups we have in Nigeria. There are certain social norms that we all know offend the sense of fairness. They are offensive to the sense of justice. As a leader, even though it takes a long time to convince people around us, that's the starting point. Because if we cannot shift that conviction on those norms, we cannot be effective in diplomacy. And so working together with like-minded people, we start a process of shifting the norms if they offend the sense of social justice and fairness. Now, sometimes the role of leadership, that's why they say it's lonely to be a leader at times. The leaders, effective leadership sometimes has to move people away from their comfort zones. And maybe that's what you're talking about norms. We need to move people away from, oh, this is how we have always done it. Leaders must come from a point of there's a better way and be able to demonstrate that. But you cannot do that if you have a lack of trust with your community. So your community must be able to trust you. They must be able to respect you enough to know that this person is worth following. And you see, I also like to say this from time to time, that because we have such a low trust environment in our communities, we pay something that is trust tax on every transaction. There is a trust tax that we pay as leaders. And that's why people will not regard whatever it is we are saying unless there's trust. So in other parts of the world, for instance, you can do credit, you can take them on credit and go away. And we can't do that here. We have to see it. Until very recently, except for this pandemic, there are some shops that unless you bring cash, they are not talking to you. There are some businesses you cannot do as an organization without cash. In fact, I was discussing with a friend the other day and he was telling me there are some multinationals that unless you bring the invoice, the paper, stamp, signed, sealed, they won't transact business with you, they won't pay you. Whereas with this COVID thing that just happened, they are accepting them to email and scan it. So there is a trust tax that a society pays when there is a trust deficit. And that comes through in the inability of leaders to effect change, either to norms or to practices that will bring benefit to the society. So I don't know whether I've answered that question well. All right, I think Patricia, your hand is up again, or it's been up since the other time. I see
She just came online.
Oh, she just came back online. Okay, so at this point, I believe that as we can begin to wrap this by saying, as leaders, the bedrock of effective diplomacy, the same way it is for diplomats who have to represent their governments, the bedrock is trust in leadership. Seeking to understand the other. And I mentioned the fact that the way to understand is to be active listeners, not just listen to react, but listening to understand and appreciate where the other person is coming from. And that is missing essentially in the practice of leadership in this country to a large extent, from what I have seen. And you see, as leaders in our respective areas, that element of seeking to understand the other, trust, and actively investing in self-awareness, self-integration, social appreciation of our environment, we would not be able to make the right kind of impact, either as community leaders or as business leaders or as public sector leaders, whichever area where we're working. It's important that as leaders, we engage on those three very important levels. So that's, in a nutshell, my view of how leadership and diplomacy work together for effective results, for helping leaders to get results and effective. Thank you very much. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right.
Yes, sir, we are hearing you.
Hello?
Yeah, I just finished wrapping up everything. I
Okay.
don't know if you have any other comments.
Yeah, it's just a bit of thanks from the Deputy Class Governor. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your time. So,
Okay.
the Deputy Governor will give a bit of thanks, then we are good to go.
You're welcome.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for today. We are deeply humbled and privileged to have learned from you. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you. I'm looking at you, and I admire your side, bro. I wish I could talk more like that.
Thank you very much, sir. We are really, it's a privilege to have you talk to us on this subject. And tell you, we have really learned a lot. I personally have learned a lot. And on behalf of the class, we are promising you that we will go out there and we are going to implement, because it's not enough to hear. The actual essence of the leadership class is that when we go to our various smaller circles, we're able to replicate and implement what we have learned. So thank you very much for this knowledge that it will stay with us for a lifetime. We are grateful, and we also pray that God will continue to increase you in wisdom and knowledge. We also want to thank Kevin Kachi for giving us the opportunity to learn. Say God will continue to keep us as we grow. In Jesus' name. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Aki.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I also use this opportunity to invite all of you. I have a monthly conversation that I hold with leaders. If you are able to join us, it will be nice, so that we continue to have conversations from time to time. Kebit Kase is our link to that. They can give you access to how you can connect with us from time to time. And it's an online event that I hold at the end of every month, where leaders can come and just share how leadership is working with you and for you.
Thank you, sir. It was great having you.
Thank you. God bless you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I don't take it for granted. All right. See you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Hello, ma. Anything for the class? They are waiting for you. You know, are you not talking to the class? Don't speak there.
Hello. Good afternoon. I hope we enjoyed the class today. I would like to use this opportunity to thank our lecturer for today, to have done a wonderful work